Hello, it's another beautiful day here in Maryland, spring day. Today, this video is called Uh-oh, my chipper blew up. As you can see, there's a giant pile to be chipped here. I started my chipper. I had just gotten it back from a friend of mine. It ran for about 30 seconds. I noticed it was running on 3 cylinders, and then it just seemed like it got progressively worse. Then I did a compression check, and this cylinder right here, that's got Zippo. This one over here was low, but this is completely Zippo. So we're gonna pull this head off and see what's happening in there. All right, I've gotten all my bolts off of this tin. So now, we gotta get the cylinder head off of here. Maybe I'll loosen that up over there a little bit just so I can. Now, of course, one of those bolts snapped off. All the head bolts came off except for that one. So what I'm hoping is I'm going to open this up and find a blown head gasket, and then we're going to be like, yay, we're going to put another gasket on there. But based on the noises it was making and there's something that I see in there, I don't think that's going to be the case. Let's see here. Let me go get my rubber hammer, tap this thing off of here. Okay, let's watch it. The big reveal. Oh, look at it. Oh yeah. I'd say that motor is toast. That is bad. There's probably all kinds of piston down in there. So, yep, that's the end of that motor. I mean, we could, well, there's a piece of something over there. We could put a valve in there, and I mean, you got 2 bent valves, and I'm not sure how bad the cylinder wall is scarred up, but we should look at the other side just to see. So now what I have is a bunch of V4 1770 parts. These cylinder heads, they're worth about $100. So I will put this on Facebook Marketplace and sell the parts. Now, this motor's always been a little underpowered. So that is a 35 horsepower motor, and I have a friend who's got a V465D, which is 65 horsepower, that's been recently rebuilt. Well, it was probably rebuilt a couple years ago, but it hasn't been run much. So I'm gonna buy that and put that on here. So I wanted to make sure that this wasn't gonna be something simple, which it's clearly not. And I mean, who knows if the crank isn't all effed up, which I seriously doubt. I mean, technically you could maybe pull these valves out and put new valves in, and yeah, I don't know, but then you're just gonna have a clunky old motor. Anyway, the issue with the bigger motor is going to be that this clutch that I had made for this, that is a 1 7/16 shaft right there. So the newer motor has a 2-inch shaft. So we're gonna get this clutch off and we're gonna take it apart and see if there's a inner bushing that can be swapped out to make it bigger. There might be. When you see it spin here, you realize this whole thing isn't spinning, so it's very possible that they make an inner bushing that's bigger and we can reuse some of this. So we'll see, because that was not cheap. So let's guess I'm gonna just kind of loosen up, and backhoe is not working at the moment, so actually maybe we'll put this project on hold for the right now, and maybe I'll get the clutch off. And I got T-fittings for the backhoe return line needs new T-fittings. There's one that's leaking, so we'll deal with that during the week. And then we can get this motor off and put our new motor on and start figuring out what to do about the clutch situation. All right, so I'm getting this clutch off. There's a retaining ring right there. I pulled that off. Also, these little screws here go back on this aluminum piece, which I remember having made because there was no way to tighten this thing to that. So I was able to tighten the aluminum to the shaft and then screw it to the back of this here. So anyway, we're gonna try and slide this thing apart. My motor loose and spun, so I can get my puller on that. Let's see if we can pull that thing off. So as we all know, this is not just gonna come off of here. There's a pin in there that's been beat in. I don't know if it's gonna slide it off or not, but we're getting the electric impacts because the battery one doesn't have enough to do anything. So probably what we'll do is we'll hit this with the electric, and then I'll kind of bang on it with that, find some shitty socket to put it on there so I mess the socket up and not that, and see if get it to break loose. Okay, so we're stopping for the day because we got somewhere to go. I know that is a 3/8 keyway, and so therefore I'm going to get a 3/8 drill bit and center punch that and drill that out as much as I can, and then that should come off easier. I'm sure that keyway is just binding it big time. I have a vague recollection, 10 years ago, pounding that thing in there. Why I would do that, I don't know, but maybe it was probably sticking out and needed to be pounded in. So anyway, we're gonna drill it out soft. So I'm gonna cover this thing up. Okay, good morning. Here's what we're going for today. V465, we're gonna take it off this lift here, good running motor, get it into truck. All right, we're getting backhoe over here to yank this thing out now. All the little things are off it, intake and all that, so now I should be able to yank it out of there. It's unbolted. And here it is. Magic. It's at my house. There's all the stuff. The shroud got a little dinged up there. Actually, this looks old. Maybe I didn't ding that up. Maybe it's been pre-dinged because that looks like it's old and rusted. So anyway, that's a beast, man. 65 horsepower. Okay. So there is the W4 1770 engine that is garbage. Then, see, this is what I should have filmed. It would have been very exciting. There's the old backhoe in the corner. We just use that to pick up one engine out of the truck and put it on here, and take that one engine off of here and put it on there. So now we've got our V465 engine on this chipper. I can obviously spin it and then start worrying about how I'm gonna get the pulley system hooked up, etc., etc. The good news is after spinning it, we can see that our pulley's gonna line up as it should. So that's good, and also we are in line there, so that's huge. Imagine if we had put this on here and that thing was offset like this way or something. So we kind of lucked out there, I guess. I assumed that's what was gonna happen, but that makes me feel pretty happy. And what we're probably gonna do is, rather than use that clutch, which won't fit on here, we'll get just a solid pulley, and then on these bolts here, we'll arrange some sort of belt tensioning clutch type deal, just to make life easy. So one last look at this old motor before we get back to our new motor. We've got our clutch ordered for the new motor. So obviously the valve burnt. That would be the exhaust valve, burn up and then broke off and went into our cylinder and destroyed our piston and bent our connecting rod and kind of toasted this motor up. So anyway, it did its thing for quite a while. So all right, so here's clutch for new chipper motor. This is a giant centrifugal clutch that was $1,500. All right, let's get this out of here. Okay, so on this chipper here, our shaft was too short. I had machined a 2-inch stub shaft with a hole in it. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our old connection there. Just kind of put that on there. Put this in here. I'll cut a small piece of keyway, but I can now use this hole to drill. We're going to use our center drill here, and we'll be able to make a nice mark. It'll be exactly centered, so I'll get my drill, put this in there, get my center hole. Then we'll end up using the proper bit to drill our hole to be tapped out for our 3/8 24 thread bolt. So that is the plan. All right, there's my perfectly centered hole. Now we're going to start very slowly drilling, and we're going to tap, and we need to get in pretty much the length of those threads, because when we put this through here, pretty much all the threads are exposed. Nice. All right, we're getting to get a little bit of depth on the hole. What I'm doing is I'm just putting a couple drops of oil in there. I drill. We get a bunch of metal coming out of there. I pull the drill bit out. We don't want it to get too hot. I clean it all off with the brake cleaner. I re-oil, and I'm just going to keep doing this like a millimeter at a time, or maybe 3/16 of an inch at a time, until we get to our depth. And I'm using this to keep my drill bit centered, so it's working nicely. We're just taking our time, not letting anything get too hot. We don't want to mess this drill bit up. Okay, now we've got our nice hole drilled way in there. We're going to get our tap out and bottom this tap out in there, and then we'll knock this out. We'll make a solid piece the length that we want it, and put our key in there, and then we'll try and actually install this clutch and tighten our bolt down. Okay, so I've been going in and out, cleaning it in a little more, in and out. This is my tap here. So I got it all the way in. Next thing to do is going to be clean it all out and make sure that bolt thread's in there all the way, which I'm sure that it will. Get this out of here and clean all the metal out of there. All right, there's our screw, or our bolt, threaded in there. Not the tightest fit, but you know what, it's fine. It's not going to go anywhere. Essentially, this will be used to keep outer piece from sliding out of there. So technically, I could knock this out and line it up. Okay, this is a little bit tight. Got my shaft in there. We're gonna slide our clutch on here. We're gonna knock that in, and then we're gonna tighten that down. And this thing is cut off not perfectly straight, so actually by tightening that down, it kind of wedges it. It'll create some tension there. Then we have a screw in there and another one right over there. So should be good. Okay, so now this bolt is in here, holding that on. Everything was slightly off, so I took the front of that bolt and chamfered it, and that's in there super tight. That's in there super tight. Everything's nice and tight, and it's going to work great. And now I'm going to tighten the screws there and there onto this, and this is never going anywhere. So I'm very happy how that came out. We solved that problem of the cutoff shaft to my satisfaction. Okay, now we have an alignment issue. We've only got one belt that could theoretically work. We can scoot our motor over a little bit, but we're going to have to actually scoot it over a bunch and probably reinforce stuff and drill new holes. And it's going to be interesting. I don't think we're going to end up with a belt tensioning system. I think we're just going to end up scooting it over, and it's going to be interesting. So probably longer belts will help, because I might have more room to work with back in this area here. All right, well, one problem solved, another one to deal with. So let's put this away for now. I wonder if it would run with one belt. Probably would, but it wouldn't be very good. We really need those 3 belts on there. Certainly we could get 2 by just moving it over and drilling some holes, but I want to try and get this thing lined up properly. So, all right, well, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Okay, so our motor's just, it's turned now, but what needs to happen is this needs to get lined up with that. So that means this and this need to go that way. So it's just welded there and there, and same thing with this one. So I think if I cut them all loose, then we'll just kind of knock everything over. I can be spinning this motor around. And I think the thing to do, since these are very accessible, is cut those front ones out first. So we'll work on that, those welds. And then I could almost put a bolt in here and a bolt into there, and then sort of just literally slide everything together as one unit, and then start tacking it and welding it. And you get the idea. So that's what's going to happen. Okay, we've got this re-welded. Everything, you can see how much it's scooted over. And now we're in line. We've got our belts on. So this is getting, got to basically get a fuel tank and a throttle hooked up on here, and we are going to be ready to roll. So that's huge, huge progress. That's enough for today. ends the chipper saga. We're back in business. A couple of notable things. This came from BLM Clutch. I've got another one that I had to make for the other chipper. That was 1,500 bucks. So a project like this, you got to spend some dough on, and I spent $1,000 on that motor. So old motor blew up. $2,500 later, I got a chipper again. But I guess the question is, sure, I'll get a lot of comments on this. Is this worth 2,500 bucks or not? In other words, before, after, with that blown motor, I essentially had zero. Now I've got a functional machine. So certainly I'm going to use it around here for many more years again. The other one I probably used for 10 or 15 years with that one motor, maybe 10 years. And so I got my use out of that. I would imagine if I had rented the chipper as many times as I did. I've got a tree that's got to come down over there. So thus ends that saga. And that also does not include all my time put into the thing. That was free, I guess. So anyway, that is the end of the chipper story. All back in business.